welcome, Morgan. Thank you so much for agreeing to participate in our Career Treks program. We're excited to share about you to our students. To sort of start off, I'd like to just sort of ask if you can just give yourself a little introduction.
Sure thing. So, as you mentioned, my name, of course, is Morgan Kainu, and I graduated from the University of North Texas with a Bachelor of Arts in Anthropology in 2019, December. And after that, I had a ton of fun doing some analog astronaut missions where I placed myself in environments that are attempting to mimic what it would be like to live in an austere environment like space. And you test out different environments, or, well, yes, different environments too, but different protocols, tools that could potentially be used in space. And I conduct my ethnographic research on top of that, which is in situ, which is why I go and participate in these analogs as well. And on top of that, I have been working in research and development for Radiant Aerospace, which is a new startup aerospace company. We just came out of stealth mode, so not a lot of information has been released to public, but whatever is available to the public, you can find on our website. Um, Other than that, I have been more recently working with Stellar Amenities. It's a space architecture company, also a startup, woman owned, and our main motive is to work to design and make space more acceptable for everybody through architectural designs. And most recently, we've worked with the Astro Access mission to ensure that those people who are handicapped are able to have a fun experience in zero gravity in space.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing.
Of course.
In 2019 wasn't very long ago. You've been very, very busy since graduating.
Yes. Well, it's been a minute. It's a wild ride. I feel like it's been so long ago, but also so soon. I mean, 2019, you graduate and then you're thrown into the industry, and then COVID happens. So everything started to shut down. But I can't even imagine those that graduated within the total shutdown. What a nightmare.
I can't either. I also graduated from undergrad in 2019. So
Oh, wow. Full
yeah,
scary.
we barely got out of
I
the
know.
COVID,
Wild.
but very, very cool. So you shared just a little bit about what you're doing now in your career, but can you tell me a little bit more about sort of the path that led you to where you are today?
Absolutely. It's a little bit of a journey, so I'll try and compress it as much as I can. But I did grow up in the middle of nowhere. I was a farm girl, totally and completely. Ran a ranch, had my animals, woke up at 4 a.m. every day. And most of my family were farmers or veterinarians. And coming from that background, I obviously was more exposed to that lifestyle. So I felt like I had to follow that lifestyle. And I started my journey as a veterinary medicine major at Tarleton State University in 2009. So I am definitely a little bit older generation trying to find their way, but as the years passed at Tarleton and I progressed with my degree, I quickly realized it was not for me. There was a lot of moral issues that I was battling with, and my heart was just not in it, was not having a good time. I was not succeeding at all at the university. So I just decided it's time to come home. I'm gonna, just go back to the farm and take classes at my community college so that way I can get my basics done with, take a few electives, see what I like. And it just so happened that one of my electives was anthropology. And I knew that I had always found understanding and learning about different cultures around the world was absolutely intriguing to me. That it was just so cool that there were all these different varieties of human beings around living their own lives in different ways. And from that course on, I knew that I wanted to major in anthropology. I knew that I had to do it. That's where my heart is. It's what thrilled me in life and propelled me forward. So from then on, declared my major at ACC. A few years passed because I was working full time to pay for college myself. And eventually, it's silver lining here. The company I was working for had a foreclosure, and we were all laid off. And I was like, okay, this is my sign. I'm going to go back to school full time. And at that moment, I applied for UNT, was accepted, and from there, I started my journey at UNT in 2017. And I still didn't quite know what I wanted to do with anthropology. It was a whole brand new world for me. I was navigating everything by myself since I didn't have any family member to really guide me or anything like that. But I can't express my gratitude to the anthropology department enough, because as soon as I went in for the orientation and talking with the counselors in anthropology, they learned that I love space, and it was like my absolute childhood dream to become an astronaut. They're like, oh my gosh, you need to talk with this student, Joe Eichen, who worked with NASA in anthropology. And I was like, no way, it's a thing. So this does exist. I'm not just going crazy. So I started talking with her a little bit more, and that started, racking my brain, like, what can I do to apply anthropology and space together? Because it's out there, people are doing it, even though it's not um, a traditional track, if you will. It's not a traditional degree. You kind of have to make it up as you go. And it was during one of the applied anthropology classes with Dr. Davenport, who I believe is no longer there. I think she retired possibly, but she brought in all these different anthropologists with different backgrounds, applied anthropologists with different backgrounds, and they shared their story and provided us resources, etc. And one of them suggested the best thing you can do when moving to a new city as an anthropologist is to interact with the community, get to know the environment, look for nonprofits that you can get involved with. I was like, you know what? That's a fantastic idea. So I started looking for nonprofit organizations in the Denton and DFW area to see how I could start getting involved with the space community. And unfortunately, I didn't find a whole lot. I was very surprised that the entire DFW area really didn't have much, but I did happen to see something called Students for the Exploration and Development of Space pop up. And I started learning that you can start your own collegiate chapter. And I was like, ooh, I sense an opportunity here. So I looked to see if UNT might happen to have a chapter already started, and we did not. And from there, I reached out to the chair of the Council of Chapters of Students for the Exploration and Development of Space, or SEDS, SEDS for short, to save some breath. And from there, we just started getting going with the process, and we started the organization at UNT end of 2017. And from there, I started really getting involved more in the organization, the industry, learning what's going on. And I learned more about space architecture. I was like, ooh, you know what? That sounds really cool. And I don't know what exactly it was, but something in my brain triggered anthropology, architecture, and medicine, medical devices. And I wish I could tell you why it popped into my head. I don't know. It's like an aha moment. My brain's like, oh, yeah, these connect somehow. But from there, that's how I started getting my interest in my ethnographic research, which is going into these space habitats and understanding how medical professionals utilize the space within these environments, and how they need to conduct themselves with different procedures, protocols, and tools, because it's completely different than how they're going to be maneuvering and performing their necessary actions on Earth in gravity compared to in zero G gravity or a confined and austere environment. So that's really where all of that long story led up to.
Oh, that's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. That's
Yeah.
such an incredible, inspiring journey. And I really appreciate you two sharing, sort of where you started. And,
You're frozen on my end. So sorry.
oh no, am I still cutting out?
No, you're still there now.
Okay, good. Just let me know if I cut out again.
Yeah, it's my internet connection somehow. Let me turn off a few things. I'm so sorry.
No worries.
As you said, whenever you need it the most.
Of course, it'll work every other time, but not when you need it.
Yeah, fall asleep. Okay. All right, let's see if this goes better. I don't have a warning sign on my end anymore.
Okay, so let me know. But yeah, I really appreciate you talking about your whole journey and sort of the ups and the downs, and realizing, you didn't want to be a vet, and sort of what led, because that can be just so hard to just be so set in a direction and then having to change paths and that can be really scary and not knowing where you're going next. And so, yeah, so it's such an inspiring story, and you found something that you truly love and enjoy, it sounds like. And I found an article where you were featured by UNT that talked all about the Society for Women in Space Exploration. Yeah, the society you created, and how you created your own path here. And like you said, it's not something that's very common, but it just stood out to me. I thought that was really awesome. So yeah, and I know that students are gonna really find that encouraging when they watch this interview. So yeah, so my next question, and you sort of touched on this a little bit, but what kind of education, training, or background does your job require?
So for specifically the one I have with Radian Aerospace, it is highly sought after and preferred to have an engineering background, as almost anything within the aerospace industry is going to ask of you. I have run into more people that have an engineering background that can fit into the slots that aren't engineering than vice versa. However, I think that the biggest priority for you is to focus on what you really want to do and have that passion behind you, and then go out and network until you drop dead, basically, because you never know who you are going to meet. They could end up being a great industry connection, or they can end up actually being some of your best friends who eventually talk you up to other industry professionals with people that they work with, which is sort of what happened to me. Is that I made a friend, and a friend of a friend introduced me to them, and here we are with Radian. And they, like, over the different experiences that I've had with networking and volunteering, I've acquired different skill sets and at least general knowledge of the industry, to where I can fit and fill needs up until the point where my anthropological background can fulfill their needs. So I would say, again, stay with your passion, whatever you want to do. Form your own path. It is hard. I'm not going to sugarcoat that. It is very hard. You're always going to have people telling you that you should go the easier route, the degree most sought after, because it's going to pay you well in the end. That's, the time old saying. If it doesn't pay well, it's not worth it. But are you really going to be happy? So go with what makes you happy. Go volunteer and network, get those skill sets, and then everything else will eventually just fall in line.
That is fantastic advice. I love that. Yeah, I can't impress students enough how important networking is. So wonderful advice. So this one's also kind of related to what we've been talking about. And you explained how you got into this field, and how it's a lot of engineers typically that they're seeking. My next question is, how do most people get into this field, and what are some common entry-level jobs?
Let's see. I would assume that a lot of people, like, this is pure assumption here. By no means is this accurate statistical data, but a lot of people get into it from hearing about the prospective job market. It's very much growing and increasing, especially within the space industry. I mean, it's almost common news to see something happening in space now, whereas 10 years ago it was super uncommon. We almost lost the space industry for a minute there, but now it's super booming, and a lot of people are jumping on the engineering bandwagon because there's a lot of prospective opportunities there, whichever route you go, any type of civil engineering, bioengineering, etc. Any way you go is great. Entry level jobs are, I don't think I'm going to be able to even properly speak to that, just because I'm not traditional engineering background. But I mean, I can speak to the way to search for, just look for entry level engineering jobs wherever you go, or even fellowships. Actually, fellowships would probably be a really phenomenal route to go within the engineering world. Brooke Owens Fellowship for women, or women identifying peoples, is phenomenal. And more recently is the ZED Fellowship for underrepresented communities. Then there's the Matthew Izikowitz Fellowship as well, and the Patty Grace Fellowship. So I would recommend any of those for people looking to gain internship experience and potentially get their first job straight out of college. I know a lot of people who have gotten hired out of that fellowship.
That's very interesting. Yeah. Thank you. All right. So I'm really excited to hear about this one. What does a typical day look like for you?
Oh boy. So depending on who who I'm working for at the time, I'll wake up and I get to work from home, which is great. I love that. If it's not at home, then I am traveling around or I'm in an analog environment from anywhere from 1 to 2 weeks at this point in time. I'm hoping to extend that to months to maybe even a year at some point, to get better data. But for Radian or Stellar Amenities, I'll wake up, have my morning brew, and I will check my emails and see what the tasks are for the day, and just step by step go through and complete those tasks. A lot of them have to do with a working with different partners and ensuring that we have proper agreements set up, and doing a bunch of back end research with competitors, and creating let's see, presentations to present to people, especially different governments. NASA is our top, of course, for both companies. I do a bit of design work here and there. I'm trying to, if I'm sounding a little bit hesitant, is because I'm trying to maneuver around what I can and can't say due to NDA. So apologies. But yes, a lot of different design concepts and works, ideas, drawing board concepts, if you will, mainly for Stellar Amenities, but I have done some work related to concept ideas, in architectural design for Radiant Aerospace. And that's a majority of it. Lots and lots of meetings. Every day is pretty much booked up, lots and lots of emails every day. But that's how it goes, especially with startup companies, is that you don't have a lot of hands-on activities when you first get involved. You're building things from the ground up, so you have to hold out for the long run. And the further you get into, making those proper connections and fundings, the more you get to do the hands-on fun stuff. So starting to get a trickle of those, but not quite there yet with the full hands-on concept design and building yet.
Yeah, but that's so cool that you get to be a part of that. The building phase, and yeah, I'm sure it keeps you busy for sure. Yeah, okay. My next question. You talked about how wonderful anthropology professors were here. Who are some of your other mentors in this field?
In this field, I have a good handful of people from different areas within the industry, but I would have to say the top three people that I have found so much solace in, who have really propelled me forward and really lifted me up with my whole dream and ambitions, are three of my crewmates from my most recent analog mission at the Mars Desert Research Station. There is Dr. Shauna Pandya from Canada. She was one of the crew commanders. Wonderful spokesperson, truly an amazing soul, who's always ready to uplift people and give you the best humor of your life whenever you need it the most. And then there's Dr. Johannes Finsoy from Norway. He was one of our medical officers, and both of those two, Shauna and Johannes, really helped me with my anthropological research and studying, and ensuring that I was undergoing the process correctly and had some really good feedback. And then there's another good friend, Matt Wise, who was part of the Army or military. I don't think Army is the correct terminology for what he was doing, but I don't know if I'm allowed to say it on here. But he was military, and he was just an overall really wonderful person, a MacGyver, if you will, knows how to do everything somehow. If you have a question, he knows the answer to it. If you need to get something or know how to do something, he can tell you how to do it. and just overall feel good person. So those three I would say are definitely my top in this industry, for professional. And then of course there's my whole group of what I call my space family, the connections and friends that I've made for life through Students for the Exploration and Development of Space. And we're all in different, somehow we're all in different fields within aerospace, but we all talk with each other and make sure that the tracks that we're going are, a good step forward. And, of course, we talk about the good times, we talk about the bad times because there will be some. So, yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. Yeah. That's so wonderful. You've had so many wonderful mentors and people that have encouraged you and supported you, and I'm sure you've done the same for them. So that's really neat. All right, next question. What aspects of your job, your role, do you like or dislike?
Wonderful question. I'll tell you what I shared with them is I'm not particular to the back end operations aspect or the administrative aspect of it, but I do know how to do it because of my skill set going through all the volunteer work and networking. So I'm often voluntold for those types of roles, which is okay. It needs to get done. It's understandable, but it is my least favorite thing to do. I'm very much more a hands-on type of person, so I enjoy the building, the designing aspect of it, the working in a team and collaborating aspect of it. So I definitely thrive during those moments a bit more, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. Alrighty. So, if students listening are interested in what you do, would you recommend any specific courses for students to take? Or honestly, would you recommend the anthropology path for students?
That's a difficult question. I It does come down to what type of path are they looking for? Are they a very self-motivated person that wants to do research and has that definitive interest that they want to figure out? If so, then applied anthropology, yes, 100%. And I would definitely look into the applied master's program with them since they will actually work with you and a client to get that actual experience. I know that they were phenomenal working with me, myself, and then the prior student, Joe Eichen, with NASA. So the knowledge is there for them. And then there's uh, Christina Wasson, who did an independent study with me. So the opportunity is there to create your own course, if you will. You just have to ask, really. Um, However, if you want to jump into the hands-on work immediately, get to building, designing off the bat, but have a supplementary understanding of the human experience on top of that, but you don't want to do any of the research, then I would go pure engineering route and minor in anthropology or dual bachelor degree if you have that, the money and the time to commit to that.
Yeah, that's wonderful advice. Independent study sounds like it was a wonderful opportunity for that student and you.
Yes, yes. Christina Watson was so good. I loved having our meetings. It was every 2 weeks I would do a couple of readings and a literary analysis of it, and then we would just talk about space. It was wonderful. We would theorize about things, why this happened, why that happened, what it's doing to today's industry, how they could look at the future. It was great. Ended up with over 100 and I think 80 pages of literary analysis. So
Wow.
lots to think about.
Cool. Absolutely. Very cool. Alright. I feel like you've talked about the next question a whole bunch.
Okay.
But is there anything you'd like to add in terms of relevance of your undergraduate major to your work?
Let's
I
see.
feel like you've covered it pretty well though. So
Yeah, little tidbits here and there. I mean, any
Mhm.
direction you go, just going to university and having the commitment to go and understand things on a deeper level is already a step above and beyond a ton of people. Because it's hard. It really is hard to juggle that many classes of personal life any extracurricular lives whatsoever. So if anything, it teaches you some of the best time management skills you're ever going to learn. Um, but for anthropology specifically, I think the biggest takeaways that I have ever gained for it, and I would do it all over again, is how to understand people whenever they're talking to you. Sometimes people will come at you very angry, or it will seem angry, and that's not the way they're actually coming off. If you look at it from an anthropological perspective, this is just an example. It's not anything that I've personally been through just yet. Um, but it allows you to take a step back and look at things from an outsider's perspective and really begin to understand that this is not just about you. There's something bigger going on. There could be cultural differences that have informed them how to react in this particular type of situation. So that's a huge thing that anthropology has definitely taught me within the industry, because it can be very fast paced and intense in the aerospace industry. Outside of that, all the different international relations, I think some of the best experiences I had were interacting with the different cultures. At University of North Texas, I was a part of World Echoes too, an international student organization, and being within the anthropology groups and the international organization really taught me how to understand and work with people from different cultures around the world too. So forever thankful for that. And then of course, the lovely theory aspects of anthropology and how we as a whole, but also individually understand how the world works as people, as human beings.
That's so cool. Yeah, because you mentioned you're working with so many people from all around the world.
Yes.
I could definitely see how a background in anthropology would be very, very, very useful. But just how cool it would be to meet so many different people. So yeah. The next question you talked about a little bit as well. But what are some other common career paths, sort of in aerospace generally?
Let's see. I mean, you can obviously be a rocket engineer. That seems to be the most sought after. I mean, it sounds really cool, right?
Does sound cool.
Rocket engineer. That famous saying, it's not like it's rocket engineering or rocket science.
Rocket science, yeah.
And they could just say, oh, but it is. So that's cool. Um, I mean, there's material sciences too, civil engineering. I know people joke about civil engineering all the time. I'm not sure you or anybody else that's going to listen to this has heard any jokes, but they really are some of the biggest backbones to our industry. I mean, our infrastructure today, as we know it, is thanks to a lot of civil engineers, and then they contribute a lot to the aerospace industry and can fulfill so many roles. Any engineer really can. They're phenomenal people and do phenomenal work. Um, Bioengineering is, I think, relatively new, and is definitely something that I'm fascinated in, because I think it's interesting to combine the human aspect again with the engineering aspect. And I do think it's a huge part of our future. I mean, it's really endless. If you don't want to go engineering, then there's aspects like astronomy, aeronomy, operational sciences. You can be a science educator, science communicator, which is really popping off right now. I know so many science communicators or space communicators coming through right now. I know Sarah Treadwell is a big one on Twitter and just completed her Mars Desert Research Station rotation and will be going on, I don't know how to pronounce it, so I apologize. Joides, Joedes. It's a ship that goes out into the middle of the ocean and does research. She'll be on that for a couple of months doing some cool space communication stuff. So, I mean, there's really a lot of options out there, and I mean, endless opportunity. All you have to do is go to Google and look at your interests in plus space. Sometimes that'll, give you a nice rabbit hole to dive into for the next few weeks. There's different programs that you can look into off on the side. Like my favorite program right now, and again, thanks to Dr. Shauna Pandya, is the International Institute for Astronautical Sciences, which is where I'm working on my bioastronautics certification and eventually master's degree. They have all these different different courses that you can take, if you will, for like pilot engineering, pilot testing, engineering, bioastronautics, aeronomy, as I was mentioning earlier. And then another program, if you're interested in atmospheric related space stuff, there's the Polar Suborbital Science in the Upper Mesosphere, Project Possum, which is really cool. I mean, so many different routes that you can go, but those are, I think, some of the ones I'm more intimately familiar with.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, I'm learning today too, you know.
Yeah.
I think, you know, there's the sort of general assumption that you have to, yeah, you're a rocket science if you want to be, you know, an astronaut or want to
Yeah,
work.
exactly. Exactly. You could be in geology and become an astronaut. You can
Yeah.
work with molecular biology or any type of biology really and become an astronaut. You can be you can work in horticulture too. That's a big one up and coming too, is different horticultures or even agricultural aspects.
Mhm. That's so cool. Very cool. Right. Next question. And then you just mentioned, yeah, some more training, and working towards your master's. Are there any additional certifications or training you would recommend?
Yes, 3D modeling. Very, yeah,
Okay,
very,
interesting.
very common in most all of the engineering MATLabs. Rhinoceros I have seen as one of the most commonly used programs. Um, I would look into coding, 100% coding, coding, coding. At the minimum, Python. There's SQL, SQL. Java never hurts to have that in your back pocket either. C plus, C sharp, you know, all the traditional ones that you hear being thrown around, all great to have. But I do think Python is going to be the easiest one for people to bring themselves into the world of coding with. So definitely those. Let's see, I'm trying to think of any other modelings that I heard. Fusion's another big one. I think those are the main two that I've come across, those Fusion and Rhinoceros.
Yeah, perfect. All right. I think the last question, what advice would you give someone who is considering this type of job?
Um, Network again and again
Yes.
and again. Of course, get involved with student organizations like SEDS. You're gonna be able to travel to conferences. There's one every single year, Space Vision, and it's hosted by a different university, a different chapter every year. So you get to travel all across the United States and see what different chapters are doing. Because each chapter will have a um, specialization, if you will. Like whenever we started up at UNT, our predominant focus was incorporating the humanities into it because it wasn't very common. So that's what our specialty was, if you will. Others will specialize in geology or mostly engineering, but different types of engineering projects, mission specialists. Um, so it's really interesting to be able to travel and go and see those. And then you again network with them and you will have job fairs at those that are exclusive to SEDS members only. So it's like you get first priority for picks. And the professionals will even sometimes read over your resumes that you bring in and give you feedback of how to organize it or things that you should look into getting certified in that is specific to a role that you want to meet. So I recommend not missing out on that opportunity because it's a pretty small fee, and I do know the University of North Texas offers scholarships or funding to travel to conferences. So take advantage of that, 100%.
It's really good advice.
Mhm.
For sure. I lied. I have one more question.
Sure.
Do you have any advice for students, maybe who are kind of like you, are pursuing a degree and they're not happy working towards that degree, or is just struggling to get through school and try to find something that they really truly love and have a passion for. Do you have any advice for those students?
Yeah, I would say don't beat yourself down about it. Don't tell yourself, well, I'm already in it, so I have to complete it. That's just going to hurt you in the long run. At least for myself, it hurt me in the long run because I pushed myself too far and it turned into depression. It turned into stress and anxiety about being unsure of who I was. And it was just overall so unhealthy. Don't do that to yourself. It's going to get you nowhere. And even if you do complete that degree and push yourself through it somehow, are you going to be happy with a career in that field for the rest of your life? The answer is probably going to be no, and it's just going to be unhappy.
Mhm.
Um, put yourself first. Take a step back. Think, what would I like to do? What does make me happy? And out of those things that do make you happy, do you see yourself having an exciting time, waking up, being thrilled to go to work, or thinking about going to work and doing something with that? If so, that's probably a good sign that you want to go talk with your counselor um, about what's going on. Sometimes it's good to talk with not just your degree counselor because a lot of times they're specialized in only that degree and discussing about that degree. So go and talk with the general degree for your department. I don't know how it works outside of class, but you have your obviously your major counselor and then you have your whole class counselor that you can speak with. But talk with both of them, see what your options are. What can you do? What courses have you already take that could be potentially applied to what you're interested in? Or could you, if you're not too far ahead in your degree, can you pull it back and just finish out all your basics and take a few of those electives? You don't even have to take those electives at UNT. You can go to a community college where it's a little bit cheaper. Or you can even, if you want to go like the super cheap route, go to online institutes like Udemy or Coursera. EDX is probably the more popular one where you can take courses online from different universities most of the time for free. So you can at least get an idea of it. It may not count for an actual credit, but you'll at least have an understanding of what that is like, what the course is like, what the information that you'll be learning is like, and see if it's for you without, having to pay money for it to figure it out.